Feet Live Their Own Life by Langston Hughes coming up for discussion today. It's worth pointing out, I'm going to just put this out here right on the opening, is we read this from a short story collection. And doing a little bit of just moderate looking around on the internet, this is apparently from a collection of stories on Simple. So there's like multiple stories on this character. At least for me, I'll speak for myself, I did not read any of the other stories. So it's like I will be kind of doing this in a formalism in this story in a box.
We definitely have just a snapshot of Simple's life, but I think there's a lot of insight to what type of person he is, what he thinks is important, what he values, and how he would want to judge someone or be judged.
I have an interesting, not interesting. I have this problem in my head. When I was reading up on it a little bit, this article kept referring to him as Semple, S-E-M-P-L, and maybe that's how I'm supposed to pronounce it. I don't know. Again, reading this in a box. But I guess the character's name's Jesse B. Semple, like almost like Jesse B. Simple, but it was also E is supposed to I. I can't explain the changing, but that name seems almost like leading the reader sometimes, like just be simple. Like what do we think Langston Hughes might have been trying to communicate to us, or at least what do we take from it?
I think there's two avenues you can kind of look at this. Of some people think that life is very complex, and kind of the old saying that you don't understand somebody unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, feet. It's kind of how I took it. And then you have Simple, who says, it doesn't matter what someone's life is. You look at their feet and you can see something about them, whether it's complex or simple. We all have a story. We all have a history. We all have a past.
I can't remember what story we were talking about, but you brought up how when we try to talk about how old a tree is, we talk about the rings. I don't even know how much of a myth or reality that is, but like when you cut a tree down, theoretically, if you count the rings, it's supposed to be how many years it's lived. And one of the things that you said that kind of stuck out to me was the rings aren't necessarily just like a year in the life. It's just how we make sense of it. And I think it's kind of interesting the way that Simple, the way he's just like, look, you don't need to know everything about me, but everything about me right now tells that story. Like anything, like even something as simple as my feet, tell the story of my life. Like he talks about like the breadth, like how wide his feet are. And I know that was like something that kind of like some people are kind of shocked, like when they see like pictures of like indigenous individuals who've never put their feet in like smashing shoes, how broad like barefoot shoes kind of let your foot grow out to be. It's interesting how not only do our stories tell something about our own lives, but also how society, people around us, change us to flip it around.
One thing I've studied a lot of different history in my life of how significant feet are to many different cultures, whether it is, wearing shoes, you're a sneakerhead, right? Una loves shoes. He loves sneakers. The cowboy boot. Everybody can picture that. I say that, almost exactly what I'm talking about, even if you've never, been on a horse or on a ranch or a farm. The binding of feet, in Asia. Feet seem to be very prominent in our culture, our society. The washing of the feet with Jesus. It seems like we have this fascination with our feet. And I think it's because it's what takes us through our journey. Not everybody, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's how we get from one place to another. It's how we progress our story. And with Simple here, I think he's trying to point out that you don't have to know about everything about somebody. If you know maybe the most important thing about them, that's enough.
There's probably even like a artistic expression of like feet are what ground you to this world, right? Like there's an element of everything goes through your base, your core. Like they always talk about build a strong foundation, right? And what are feet but the foundation of a lot of progress. And again, just like you, I don't, want to be disrespectful to anyone, but obviously like this is meant to be a broader conversation here. When we talk about our role, how do we fit in? How do we make progress with society? I thought it was kind of interesting that we get a very brief glimpse, and maybe this is kind of what you're referring to, that there's a lot going on with Simple in the story, at least, that we see a lot about his growing up, like with all of his brothers and sisters. They only had 4 bedrooms, that it felt to me like Simple knew this life growing up was always fighting for resources, fighting to get his own, or at least protect what he needed out of life in some regards. How did you take his childhood with his outlook on life?
He definitely feels a little bit jaded, and rightfully so. I think that he is someone that has lived a harsh life, and he knows what it's like to have to, I don't know necessarily fight, but I only have one sibling, and so it's not like I ever really went without. But I do know that when I've sat down for dinner, per se, like a larger function, and there's 20 people there, you may not get a second plate. And so it feels like Simple has led this life of you have to take what you can get now, because something else might not be guaranteed. Tomorrow might not be guaranteed. I guess is a lack of better way of saying it for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In terms of resources, I definitely got the sense that, it's like your point. You had to take what you could get sometimes. And, it's hard for me to relate to on some levels, because my dad grew up very poor. My sisters, they were living paycheck to paycheck, but they had a house, right? Like they weren't living off of governmental support, basically.
Yeah.
And my dad, he's told me this, that he had a conversation with my mom, and they were sick of living paycheck to paycheck. He's like, I'm going to make something of myself. And he left what was ultimately low income on the broader scale of things for at least the United States. And I was the 3rd child, so I was born into it, but I don't remember it. By the time I actually got a memory, like, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8, like when you actually start remembering things, like I remember getting 10, 12 presents at Christmas, basketball hoop that we went and installed. Like my dad fought to have a better life for his kids, which a lot of people do, and some don't succeed. And I'm very grateful for that. Right. Mm-hmm. I feel like Simple story reverberates even with my own personal real life of like what I think, my dad has expressed that he went through. Cause he tried to instill those values into me of like, he had to fight for stuff, right? Like him and his brother each got the same Christmas present because it was literally just one basketball and they had to share it. Like that was their Christmas growing up. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what Simple goes through. And he's like fighting for those resources that like these feet are what's going to propel him into the progress he needs to get out of all of the things that might be holding him back. Right.
And what might be holding him back, I think that that's something too, that the story, it kind of pulls its punches on that. Well, I don't know. What did you take from of being that we read this story in a box, as you pointed out earlier? What do we know about Simple? What do we know about his background? What do we know about his race? What do we know about his upbringing? There's a lot of things that aren't really determined there that are kind of inferred, right?
Oh, yeah. Right. Like, I guess that's a good point. So here's my inference. Like, I'll share this. You tell me if you took it differently. Based on dialect, based on the fact that he took part in the Harlem riots, that he said he put his own foot, like tell me a unique story about your one foot. And you're right. You brought up a good point, how I am into shoes, but I'm also into boots. Right. And it's like shoes you don't want to use. You want the pristine, you could resell them. Right. But boots, you want to beat the crap out of them because they look awesome as you like just get them more worn in and they're like your story. Right. So here's Simple's version where he's like, my foot went through that white man's like window during the Harlem riots. So I took a story of lack of resources, repression, dialect, fighting for things. I took him as African-American who's been probably suffered through prejudice, through denial of resources. And he's saying sometimes, this is how I took his name ultimately at the end of the day, you got to keep it simple. You got to fight for your right to live, to have justice, to have respect and dignity. And, he even kind of talks about his grandfather, I think it was, or maybe I'm imagining that. But like, there's like this, he's fighting to continue what his dad started, right? In the same way that my dad fought so that I could have a better life, and he expected me to continue that too, right? We take what we've been given, right? Because everything's connected. I think that's also part of Simple's point. Everything connects to his feet. And it's part of our story to push for what we think is right. And life can be as simple as that, as a struggle to stand up for dignity, self-worth, and reliance in some regards.
I agree. And I kind of took that the same way. I also thought about it of that he doesn't have to walk in the same footsteps as his father. He doesn't have to do the same things that his grandfather did, which might have been a slave. I don't know. I haven't read the rest of the stories. I would be interested in reading those stories, but it definitely feels like he is putting his mark down. He's putting his foot down, pun intended, that this is his story. This is how he's going to move forward. This is what's important to him and how he is going to project himself.
Right. Like if his granddad, who was a person who was enslaved, lived through emancipation, and now he's living to have the dignity and rights that were being denied to him, right? Like it's that continued story, how everything's connected, like we were talking about. One thing that I think is kind of interesting is when my wife and I went out to Washington, D.C., there's at one point in one of the museums, there's like this book. And there's just a simple question above it that says, after all of the stories of inequality and how we got to where we are today, it just says, if you saw something that was wrong, what could you do to stand up to it? And it's very open-ended. Like, what do you mean by something wrong? Like, what's this scenario? Was someone being abused? Is someone being denied something? Is there illegal activities happening? Like, should you stand up? Like, there's a lot of different ways to take that. But what I like about it was almost like the simple story here. You get to make the decision. Just keep it simple. Give me one scenario of how you would stand up to do the right thing for America, for a country, for someone that's suffering, and a nation that's in injury of some sort. How do you move that needle forward? And I thought that was just like a great, kind of like to the point of simple story here, way to think about of, look, the world's messy. There's a lot of chaos. But as long as you can stand up for truth and dignity and self-reliance, I think that can go a long way with what do I need to be doing right now?
I think this is why, again, why we created this channel and why we talk about these things is opening your mind, opening your horizon. A story that was written decades ago still holds relevance today. You can still learn a simple truth. You can still learn a simple lesson of how to make your life better, your family's life better, your community, and our country. And I think we need that more now than ever. And you do that by educating yourself and reading these stories and learn from the mistakes of the past so we don't repeat them in the future. And just like Simple, he can keep moving his family forward like his fathers did for him.
And stay grounded, just like his feet did, right? So Feet Live Their Own Lives by Langston Hughes. Playlist down below. Obviously not our first Langston Hughes talk. We love this author. Let us know what other short stories by him you think we should check out next. Always open for suggestions. Leave a little comment down below, maybe of like a person walking, if you enjoyed the conversation. Obviously, if you're still here, on some level, I would hope it helps the ever hungry YouTube algorithm know that you're enjoying this talk. So thank you for spending time with us today. My name's been Una. Peace.
Peace.